Here's a scene that happens in quick service restaurants across this country every single night. The shift ends, something inevitably goes wrong. Tickets were slow, table complains, prep runs short, someone didn't show. The operator or the manager they train does a debrief, and in that debrief, somewhere in the first 30 seconds, a problem gets named. Maybe it's, man, it was just a rough night. Or, man, we were slammed. We didn't have enough people. Or maybe, she just doesn't care enough. We haven't built a system that holds under that kind of volume. These are 4 different names, but it's the same shift. And here's what nobody in the debrief understands. Every single one of those names are laying a brick. And they've been laying bricks like that in language just like that every shift, every week, every year. And what they've been building is the exact operation they're standing in right now. You see, your words are not describing your culture. They're actually constructing it. And if you don't believe that yet, I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes showing you exactly how and what to do about it. I have spent the last 20 years as an operating partner inside of a Chick-fil-A. 20 years of drive-through, back of the house, running shifts, developing people, building culture. And I can tell you that the most expensive mistake I have watched operators make, myself included, especially in the early years, it was not a systems mistake. It wasn't a hiring mistake. It wasn't even a training mistake. It's a language mistake. A language mistake that never gets diagnosed. We would build training programs and roll them out. We'd see changes, man, for about 3 weeks and then poof, gone. We'd blame the team. We'd say they didn't retain it. They didn't care enough, weren't the right people. And then we'd start the cycle all over again. And what was actually happening was this. The training was saying one thing, and the language in the everyday debrief, every correction, every casual comment in the walk-in was saying something completely different. And the team rationally and correctly believed what they heard under pressure, not what they were read or told in orientation. You see, this is not a communication problem, a construction problem. And once we understood that distinction, everything about how we ran the operation began to change. Because here's the foundational distinction. Language does not merely describe reality. Language constructs belief. Language changes culture. So when you say staffing issue, you're not describing a fact. You're constructing a belief that the problem lives outside the building. When you say, we made a decision that didn't hold, you're constructing a completely different belief that the problem lives inside the building in a decision that someone made in a system that someone ought to own. Same situation, 2 different realities. Language constructs belief. Belief drives behavior, and behavior produces results. You see, operators try to change results by targeting behavior. Behavior changes won't hold unless the underlying beliefs change. And beliefs don't change through training programs. They change through the language that people hear consistently, particularly when they're under pressure, from the people whose opinion matters most in the building. And that's you, the leader. Every operation that I have been a part of has 2 sets of standards. There's the stated standard, the one in the handbook, the one your training program has, and then there's the constructed reality. That's the standard that your team has learned that actually governs the operation. They're built entirely from what they've heard in real time under real pressure. And when those 2 things align, then you have a high-performing operation. But when they diverge, and they almost always diverge, the constructed reality will always win. Always. Here's a diagnostic question. Think about a standard in your operation that you have to enforce over and over and over again. Something that keeps slipping, despite training, despite corrections. Now I want you to ask yourself, what is the language that gets used every time that standard slips? Not in the formal corrective conversation. I mean in the moment, in the kitchen, in the debrief. Whatever it gets named, your team has been trained to believe that standard. You see, if you've been managing a reoccurring standard problem for more than 90 days, The training program likely is not your issue. The language around your problem, that's likely your issue. When something fails in your operation, a problem gets a name before anything else. And whatever name you give it, every person within earshot is learning where responsibility lives in this organization. Every problem can be named in one of three locations. External attribution, man, the market is tough, the labor pool is weak. This constructs the belief that solutions live outside your influence. Personal attribution, he doesn't care, she's not a fit. This constructs the belief that people are the variable, which often leads to perpetual turnover and zero system building. But then there's system attribution. We have built a handoff process that cannot hold under pressure. This opens a solvable problem. The question is not which attribution is accurate in any given situation. It's which one do you default to? Because the default attribution is what constructs culture. High-performance operators are not optimists. They are precisely attributive. They name the problem in the place where it can actually be solved. The most expensive language pattern in hospitality is the person attribution that closes a system problem without solving it. Because language isn't just constructive outward, it's diagnostic inward. The words you reach for under pressure are a live readout of your actual beliefs, not your stated beliefs, not your operational beliefs. There are three categories that I want you to examine. What do you believe about your people? Does your language default to character attribution? He's just not the guy. Or capability attribution? We haven't given him enough reps to make it automatic. Character attribution closes the investment. Capability attribution opens a development path. What do you believe about your own responsibility? Does your language move toward ownership or toward explanation? Especially when you're the accountable party. You see, you can't model explanation and demand ownership. What do you believe about the destination? Does your language construct possibility, here's where we're going, or limitation? With this team, we're just trying to survive the summer. Your team is deciding every day whether to invest in this operation. And the language that you use about the future is the primary evidence that they're using to make that decision about their future. So here's what we would do. For 3 consecutive days, immediately after every debrief, corrective conversation, or problem naming moment, I want you to write the first phrase that you use to describe the problem, just the first phrase. And at the end of 3 days, I want you to sort your list into 3 columns: external attribution, person attribution, or system attribution. Then ask these 3 questions. What's my ratio? Most operators that I work with find themselves running 7 to 8 external or personal attributions for every 1 system attribution. And that ratio will be your cultural foundation. Where does my language place responsibility most often? Where is my language building limitation, and where is it building possibility? This exercise is not about judging what you find. It's about seeing what you are in the building. Next, I want you to name the system before you name the person. Build the discipline of asking this question: is this a system failure or an individual failure? Name the system first. Own the system's design as a leadership function. Then the individual conversation will be grounded in what needs to change, not who is deficient. Shift 2. I want you to replace description with construction. Every time you catch yourself describing what happened, that was rough, we got slammed, I want you to replace it with a construction statement. That shift showed us exactly where our back-of-the-house system breaks down under volume. We're fixing that this week. You see, you're not spinning reality. What you're doing is you're naming what it means going forward. Shift 3. I want you to run a weekly attribution audit. Once a week for 10 minutes, I want you to review the week's problem naming moments. Listen, the goal is not perfection, it's consciousness. Consciousness produces intentionality. Intentionality produces culture by design. 30 days of these 3 shifts will change what your team says when things go wrong, because your team will start speaking the language they hear from the person whose opinion matters the most in the building. By the way, our team has developed a free PDF that helps with some of this that you can actually implement tomorrow in order to address your leaks. So if you would like that, just comment leak below, LEAK, and we're going to send it to you for free. So the most common response I often get when I speak to operators on these things are, I know I need to be more careful with my words, but I often tell them, hey, look, that's not the takeaway. Be careful with your words as a performance. You will not sustain it, especially under pressure. And pressure is when the construction work happens, right? So what is the takeaway? The takeaway is this, that language is the primary mechanism of your cultural construction. It's not your training programs. It's not the values on your wall. It's not the quarterly all hands meeting. It's the words you use when things go wrong, when someone fails, when the shift falls apart at transition on Friday, right? Those are the bricks. So the question is whether you're going to be the builder, the architect. And if you're serious, not interested, not inspired, but if you're serious, I would encourage you to do the exercises this week. For 3 days, write down your first phrase after problem naming moments. Look at what you find, and then use those 3 shifts. And that's the work that will make it happen, because your words are constructing your culture. They're not describing it. You see, most operators think about language as a communication tool, but language is the primary mechanism of cultural construction. And every shift debrief, every problem naming moment, every corrective conversation is laying a brick in the belief structure that your team lives inside of. Look, I know this can feel like a lot. So if you're interested in integrating a leadership transformation ecosystem inside your Chick-fil-A or your business, there's going to be a link below to learn more about Kalaire's Leader OS system. I do want you to know that space is very limited. For now, all I want you to do is this: pay attention to the language you use, because language will change your culture. Have a blessed day.